All right, now we're also joined with Fernando Jimenez, who is the attorney for the recall for Commissioner Count Wiley. Uh, so, Mr. Jimenez, could you break down the letter for our viewers here and just give them a clear idea exactly what's going on?
Certainly. First of all, the letter is written by Gilberto Garcia, who is the attorney for the governing body. He's the town attorney. The letter is addressed to dear sirs or madams, and it is to the honorable members of the zoning board. So Mr. Garcia is directly speaking to the board members through his letter. The letter doesn't copy the attorney for the zoning board. The zoning board and every other board has an attorney. In fact, in this case, I can't recall the name of the attorney, but I can tell you that there is no copy to any attorney on the letter. He addresses that he has spoken to the DCA regulatory officer, but he doesn't mention who the regulatory officer is or when he spoke to him. He never mentions what the content of that conversation was. Furthermore, he explains that the construction official never pursued the fines that were assessed in town. Nevertheless, the division of the DCA has the authority to collect the fines. However, what they did was, in this particular situation, they indicated that they're going to need a resolution from the zoning board. The resolution that was passed on the 24th does indicate that
That's the 24th of January, right? Just
the
happened.
24th of January, correct. It does indicate that any outstanding fines shall be resolved as a condition precedent to this approval becoming operative. What they're saying here, if I'm reading this correctly, is that so long as the board finds that these conditions have been met, there will be no penalties and fines assessed. The question, though, is how can we guarantee that the public is going to have the appropriate representation of whether the conditions were met or not? The issue really is, as the commissioner stated, the corruption involved and who is going to be making decisions that affect the public in West New York.
So, if we could get a little more in depth about what you guys are talking about corruption on this zoning board, could you go into a little more detail on what exactly or who exactly you're referring to?
Well, I'm not going to make any outright statement as to who exactly it is because, frankly, I don't know, and if there was that type of information, I would certainly recommend that other measures be taken. Nevertheless, from the conduct of the members of the board, we can certainly infer that there are decisions that are being made prior to the actual board meetings. In other words, what I am suggesting is that there are members of the board that will go into a meeting with their mind made up as to what the outcome of a hearing is without necessarily hearing all of the evidence that is supposed to be heard and considered by a board.
Now, the zoning board, as you're probably aware, is under a lot of heat right now for passing the Meridia high-rise that is going to be located near 67th Street and Boulevard East. President Kenneth Blaine had a long speech detailing why he thought this was a horrible idea, and then it was still approved 5-2. And also you have the Silvio Acosta matter that's still in front of us. So would you say these are two prime examples of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. That 67th Street project is one that raises great concerns because it indirectly involves the parking authority. And there are members of the parking authority that sit on the zoning board, and there are also members of the zoning board that sit on the parking authority board. So it just seems that on its face, at face value, there seems to be a conflict of interest there, and anyone who would go out on a limb to say that there is no conflict really should be scrutinized a little further and questioned as to how it is that there is no conflict when one can lose their position as an employee or even their position on a board by having sat on the zoning board and say, no, there is no conflict, and pass the resolution.
Now, is it legal to simultaneously be a part of two boards like that?
To my knowledge, there is no statute that says that you cannot serve on two boards. However, I think that that is something that should be left to common sense and reasoning.
Fair enough. So, the next question I have for you is just what's your next plan of action as far as Silvio Acosta is concerned?
Well, what we intend to do is investigate the matter further so that we can bring to light what the truth is in that these fines were assessed, the project went forward, the zoning board just allowed the matter to go without suspect, without scrutiny, and they just approved it, as I said earlier, based upon instructions that come from outside.
All right. Now, my last question for you today is, do you think there's any chance that Mr. Acosta could get out of this matter without paying any fines?
I think that Mr. Acosta is going to have to face the music and pay the penalties and fines. The state still is involved. This certainly is something that is not going to fall off the wagon. We will vigorously pursue the enforcement of these fines in as much as we can for the sake of the public in West New York.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.